The thing I like about the Bible is that it lays everything out as a matter of reality and truth. It does not try to hide anything. It doesn't try to whitewash anything. It doesn't try to make something look better than it is. It just lays it out there, and it deals with honesty, just the way it is, reality. And we need to be aware that that is the way God deals with us. And so when we come to the scriptures, especially in these Old Testament passages like we are here, and going through the book of Judges and now Samuel and into 2 Samuel, there's some things here that are very uncomfortable to deal with, unpleasant to deal with. There's so many other things we could rather go look at and all. And it would be so much easier to just do nothing but teach the 3rd and 4th graders and the 5th and 6th graders and have nothing but the fun stories all day long. But it's important that we deal with the reality of life at that time and recognize how it is the reality of life now for us. In Proverbs, the first chapter, the 5th verse, it says, "A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels." A wise man will hear and will increase in learning. I think it's very important for us as we consider these things and to try to find how they apply to us as a people, but apply to us as individuals. That's the important thing about all parts of the scripture, is how does it apply to me in my life and how I'm living out God's will in my life. And I say that on your behalf also. When we come to a section of scripture like this, it's an action thriller. And those are very popular. I've got to say, they always do well at the box office. But sometimes there's a lot more action than we like to deal with. I ran across one time a kill count for the John Wick series. I've not watched the John Wick movie, but I guess it's an action thing. And I believe the first movie, they've had 3 chapters, and I think they put out the 4th chapter this year, the 4th movie. So I think he's trying to pursue Rocky, see if he can produce as many. Aren't there about Rocky 8 or something like 8 or 9? So we can expect more John Wick. But the kill count in the John Wick, the first movie, they killed 69 people in an hour and a half movie. In all 3 chapters, they've killed 369 people. 369 kills, Well, that's a little too much action thriller, and we're not going to have that much action thriller in the passage that we're considering tonight. But there is enough stuff going on, and it just reads like something in today's pages. So we turn to the 3rd chapter of 2 Samuel. It says, "Now there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. But David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker." I titled this message tonight, "Just Politics." Just politics. And don't we see that happening? One side gets stronger and the other side gets weaker, and then it goes back and forth. And in this case, the Saul's side has had its run. We know that Saul got replaced. He was not to be king anymore, and his family was not to be king anymore. That was the end of his dynasty. And it was made clear that David was up and coming, that he was the one that was going to be in charge. And now we have finally reached that point. We've had the death of Saul and 3 of his sons, and now it talks about David. And in here, we find the first failure. The first failure. This is a failure, and it's happened before David. It happened for Saul. It happened for many of the patriarchs going back, and even before that, from the time of creation, this has been a failure. It says, And unto David were born in Hebron, and his firstborn was Amnon. Amnon of Ahinoam the Jezreelitess. And I made the statement, I think last week, why do they always call her Ahinoam the Jezreelitess? And then it occurred to me, well, it's because Saul's wife's name was Ahinoam also. She was Ahinoam, she was the daughter of Ahimaaz. And so that makes sense. You're trying to keep everything straight. It's just like trying to keep all the Jeffs straight in this room, Not an easy thing to do, Or if you were to yell out Anthony to Christopher in a crowd, and you're going to have 3 or 4 people come forward. So they have to kind of keep things straight. So the firstborn was Amnon. And the second was Chileab of Abigail, the wife of Nabal, the Carmelite. And third is Absalom, the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. So here again was that first political thing that was done, a political marriage. Going to have to keep peace, and this is one way to do it, and get somebody to marry into the family, and they would do that. So here becomes another marriage. It says, in the fourth was Adoniah, the son of Haggith, and the fifth was Shapatiah, the son of Abital, and the sixth was Ithream by Iglah. Now, a little bit of, this is just a curious little fact. Some of the early rabbis tried to say that, well, Eglah was actually Michal. Remember, Michal was the first wife of David? That's Saul's daughter, Michal, and Saul set the bar high, says, and what an embarrassing thing to have to say, bring me back the 100 foreskins of the Philistines, and you can have Michal for the wife. And so he brought him back. And but the fact is, they say, well, maybe Eglah was Michal. Eglah means heifer, and it's kind of a term of endearment, or maybe it was a term of a young bovine that was not under the yoke, had never taken on the yoke. And we know that Michal had not taken the yoke of her father and had defended David and helped him to escape from Saul's rage. And but I kind of take a straightforward look at things. Let's take them as they come. And the fact of the matter is that David has not demanded at this point, just a few verses from now, the demand will go out for his wife to be returned to him. And so I take it that we don't know who Eglah was, but I don't think she's Michal. So this is the first failure. The idea of having multiple wives. It seems good to the libido of the man, perhaps, but it was never the intention that God had for us. From the very beginning of time, we were designed to be one man, one woman, one lifetime. And so here we see a failure, and we're beginning to set up the very dysfunctional family of David. Because David did not do a good job as a father to his sons. And there was just too much going on. This was very, very dysfunctional. From the beginning, we were designed to be just one man, one woman. It says that, Adam was out naming all of the things that were parading past him in the Garden of Eden, giving names to everything. And he looks around, he realizes, wait a second, everything here has a male and a female, and I have no female. And so it says that God caused a sleep to come upon him, and he did something different, because all these other animals are just created, boom, ready to go. But he creates Adam to have an awareness of a need. And then he takes care of that need in a very unique way. He does the first surgery. And he puts Adam out, causes a deep sleep to come on him, and he takes a rib, it said, and out of that rib he fashioned the woman, Eve. And so it says in verse 23 of Genesis 2, it says, "And Adam said, 'This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh.'" You see, there's no room left there for a man shall leave his father and mother and take unto himself many wives and cleave unto them and become a whole bunch of flesh. Jesus made it every bit as clear. We get into Matthew, the 19th chapter, verses 3 through 6, and it says, "And the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, 'Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause?'" You know, that's one of the problems we have in America today, is that we made no-fault divorce. So it became very easy to just get rid of it. If you run across a rough time, then let's go and look for another boat. And unfortunately, this has had a very bad effect on our culture. It's had a bad effect on families and on children. And it's not good in any way. And so they said, is it lawful to put away a wife for every cause? And he answered and he said to them, "Have you not read that he which made them in the beginning made them male and female?" Well, that sure defines something, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? In the age in which we live and all the confusion there is out there, when somebody says that, oh, there's 72 different genders, you say, I'm sorry, but the Word of God says that in the beginning he created them male and female. Male and female, that's it. There are only two genders. Gender is a grammatical term, by the way, and there's only a male and female way of describing a male and a female, in both the masculine and the feminine. And he made them male and female, and he said, "For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder." And that's the kind of determination we need to make in marriages. And this is the kind of determination that we need to teach to our young children. You know, and a lot of us are looking here and say, I don't have kids at home anymore. Do you have grandkids? Now's the time, because you have a special relationship as a grandchild and a grandparent that a parent and a child does not have. And so there's still that opportunity to pour God's principles into the lives that are entrusted into our care. And so we should make this very clear to our children, that God has designed you to find the perfect mate. And to make it very clear to them that even at this point, their grandparents are praying for that mate that God is preparing for their grandchildren. And so if our grandchildren can grow up understanding this, they can go into a marriage with a greater determination to make it work. Because you know what? Life is full of all kinds of rocky places and uphill climbs and one thing and another. And the thing is, if you hang in and you get to the top, there's also some easy times. And so we need to make that determination. I've often said, when Gwen and I got married, that we determined that divorce was not even an issue. It was never to even be considered. Now, she has considered murder on several occasions, but yeah, but no divorce. And so Jesus has made this very, very clear. And yet we have these kings, and David is not going to be the last king. What he tolerated, his son embraced. And this is one of the things we have to realize in life too, that a lot of things that we tolerate, our children may embrace because we haven't really taught well enough that this is not where you go. And so it was that where David tolerated having a handful of wives, and this argument that the rabbis were making that Eglah was Michal, they're trying to make it seem like, well, he didn't have as many wives as, So, well, you know what? You can't put lipstick on a pig and have a beauty queen. It's just not going to happen. The fact of the matter is that this was a grave mistake. David made this mistake, and he's going to live with this mistake, and he's going to die with this mistake. And we are to be wise and to look upon this and to consider it and realize that this was a mistake. It's far better to learn somebody else's hard lesson than to have to learn it for yourself. So that's how we should be looking at this. One man, one woman, one lifetime. Well, verse 6 picks up, says, "And it came to pass, while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner made himself strong for the house of Saul." Okay. Abner, remember, was a cousin of Saul. Their dads were brothers. And so Abner has been the general and been in charge and is, for 40 years. He's a strong man. He's probably in his 60s at this point, and he's still a strong man because you'll just remember they had this big contest, and he was leaving the field, going back to home, and he's being pursued by Asahel. And he tells him, stop following me. I don't want to hurt you, which might have seemed strange to the young man. Asahel is probably a 20-year-old, and he's young and strong and figures he's going to be able to take him. And many a young whippersnapper has been whipped by an old goat. And that's what happened there. Because he didn't even turn around and have to do anything. He just took the butt end of his spear, which was sharpened also, and ran him through with it. In one side, out the other, and Asahel died out there in the field. And of course, you remember that set in motion what's going to happen in this chapter. And a wise person looks at this and determines it for ourselves, what's going to be our reaction when someone does something that's hurtful to us. So he's the strong man, and he's actually been running things because after Saul was killed, and Jonathan would have been the one to go in and to take over, and he was killed. And let's see, I think it would be Jonathan and Abinadab and Melchishua were the ones that were killed in the field, and that left Ishbosheth. Ishbosheth, by the way, is the fourth son, and he had to be his late 30s, early 40s when this was happening. So he's obviously of fighting age, but we don't know why wasn't he killed out there. Is Ishbosheth, he is revealed here in Scripture as not being a really strong guy. And so perhaps they put him in a different place where they wouldn't trip over him, something like that. I kind of wonder, too, if there wasn't a little bit of spoilage there, too, because you grow up in the king's house, you have whatever you want, whenever you want it, and all that sort of thing. I wonder if this is the long-haired, maggot-infested kid who's riding a skateboard and playing video games at the age of 25. And so whatever the reason, Ishbosheth was not out there. Now, these are the four sons that were from Saul by Ahinoam. And then he also had a concubine, which is kind of a secondary wife, kind of considered a wife, but not a wife. She doesn't have the legal protections that a real wife has. And so Rizpah was the concubine, and by Rizpah was born Armoni and Mephibosheth. And we've got two Mephibosheths in here also. So we'll kind of keep track of that. But at any rate, Ishbosheth is the one who becomes king. And Abner is the one who establishes and takes him to where he is. And I've got a feeling that they're just not getting along. Abner does not respect Ishbosheth. Ishbosheth is afraid of Abner, and he's also, there's something going on here. And so it was that it says, Abner made himself strong for the house of Saul, and Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, and here's where it starts getting, wherefore hast thou gone in unto my father's concubine? Oh, so he's accusing Abner of messing around with Rizpah. See what I mean? It's like going to the movies today. Everybody's jumping into the wrong bed and stuff going on in the background, and we'll see it happening here. And it says, Abner was very wroth for the words of Ishbosheth, and said, am I a dog's head which against Judah do show kindness this day unto the house of Saul thy father, to his brethren, and to his friends, and have not delivered thee into the hand of David, that thou chargest me today with a fault concerning this woman? So do God to Abner, and more also, except as the Lord hath sworn to David, even so I do to him, to translate the kingdom from the house of Saul, and to set up the throne of David over Israel, and over Judah, and from Dan even to Beersheba. And he could not answer Abner a word again, because he feared him. Right there, Abner tells Ishbosheth, it's all over. I'm done with you. I've put up with you for 2 years. And now the kingdom, I'm going to deliver it into the hand of David. That's who deserves it. So we have the false accusation and the fateful decision. Verses 12 and 13 are a diplomatic inquiring and a setting of terms. And it says, and Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, whose is the land? Saying also, make thy league with me, and behold, my hand shall be with thee, to bring about all Israel unto thee. And he said, and this is David, and he said, well, I will make a league with thee. But one thing I require of thee, that is, thou shalt see my face, thou shalt not see my face, except thou first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when thou comest to see my face. He sets the terms. This is where I say Eglah is not Michal, because she's still up north. And as you remember, she was given to someone else. She was given to Palti. He was called Palti back in 1 Samuel. He's going to be referred to as Paltiel in this next couple verses. So he's made the terms, and then he sends messengers to Ishbosheth, who is Saul's son. It says, David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, deliver me my wife Michal, which I espoused to me for 100 foreskins of the Philistines. And Ishbosheth sent, and he took her from her husband, even from Paltiel, the son of Laish. And her husband went with her, along behind her to Bahurim, and then said Abner unto him, go, return. And he returned. I'm thinking, what a scene this had to have been. So David sends the message to Ishbosheth, and Ishbosheth immediately obeys and says, take him, send him to David. And of course, he doesn't know that Abner is working on the same thing too. And there's all this communication going on behind his back. And so you see him taking Michal. And I don't know if she's going to be happy, because I think she truly loved David. and she wanted to be his wife at the beginning, and so she was. It's a sad situation. The culture at the time that women were not held in the regard that they deserved to be held in, and so this was not a decision of hers. It was Saul. Fine, I'm giving you over here to Palti. And so who knows how that marriage has gone. Obviously, Palti is in love with her. And when she's taken away, he's beside himself. It says he's weeping. He's carrying on. He's clinging. And I've got a feeling that Abner has kind of had enough. And Abner says, go, return. And he returned. Said, this is over. Go away. And Abner, it says in verse 17, which I call treachery and diplomacy. And Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, ye sought for David in times past to be king over you. Now then do it, for the Lord hath spoken of David, saying, by the hand of my servant David I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines and out of the hand of all their enemies. And Abner also spoke in the ears of Benjamin. Now that's the tribe of Benjamin, and that's the area that they're dwelling in. Remember, if we're thinking Redmond is Jerusalem, then Benjamin is just a few miles north of us and a few miles south of us, and then it's more miles wide. It's kind of looks like this and like this. And so it extends out. And so he's having communication with them and with all of Israel. And he spoke in the ears of Benjamin, and Abner went also to speak in the ears of David in Hebron, which is down south. So he heads down south to where David is. And it says, and he went to speak in the ears of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel, and that seemed good to the whole house of Benjamin. So everybody's in favor of this. They're all kind of fed up with Ishbosheth. And I can identify with that. Ishbosheth's been ruling for a little over 2 years. And that's kind of what we're in the middle of right now, a little over 2 years. Although I pray that there would not be the end for our incompetent and weak president, as became the end of this incompetent and weak king. He went to David, says, so Abner came to David to Hebron, and 20 men with him. And David made Abner and the men that were with him a feast. And Abner said unto David, I will arise and go, and I will gather all Israel unto my lord the king, that they may make a league with thee, and that thou mayest reign over all that thine heart desireth. And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. This is an important point. He went away in peace. Well, the scene changes. As Abner is going out one door, in the other door is coming Joab. And you remember, Joab is the nephew of David. And he has been the general in charge of all of David's goings on, and he's been very good at it. And says, behold, the servants of David and Joab came from pursuing a troop, and they brought in a great spoil with them. So they've been out messing around with the Philistines probably, and they come back and they've got lots of booty. And it says, but Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he was gone in peace. And when Joab and all the host that was with him were come, they told Joab, saying, Abner, the son of Ner, came to the king, and he hath sent him away, and he is gone in peace. Then Joab came to the king, and he said, What hast thou done? Behold, Abner came unto thee, and why is it that thou hast sent him away, and he is quite gone? Thou knowest Abner, the son of Ner, that he came to deceive thee, and to know thy going out and thy coming in, and to know all that thou doest. He's quite exercised. And in this, he loses track of his position. God puts us into the places that we are, and he puts authorities over us. And at this point, David is Joab's authority. And Joab loses track of that. See where there can be an application for us. Because all of us in our walks of life have different authorities that are over us. And some of those we have a fiduciary duty to, which is what Joab had because he's the general. He has a fiduciary duty to the king. And whether he agrees with the king or not, he has a duty to the king. And that's the way it is in the military line of command, the chain of command. You may not agree with the old man, but when he says to do something, you do it, whether you agree or not. And this has been lost sight of. So we, as wise people, can observe and learn. And so he goes out, and in verse 26, I call this vengeance. When Joab was come out from David, he sent messengers after Abner, which brought him again from the well of Sirah. But David knew it not. He does it under the color of authority. He makes it seem like this is the request of the king. It says, and when Abner was returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him quietly. And he smote him there under the fifth rib, and he died for the blood of Asahel, his brother. Under the fifth rib, boy, we hear this several times in this narrative of this chapter. Your fifth rib, your ribs are counted from they come off of your backbones, and they count down. And the fifth one comes around, and it connects right here with the sternum. It's kind of near the bottom of the sternum. The fifth rib, back here on the left side, is where they place the T5 sensor when they're doing an echocardiogram, because that's right where your heart, the largest ventricle of your heart, is close there, up under, tucked behind the lung. And so I don't think that he reached around and tried to go between the fifth rib from the back, because there's too much of a chance of hitting a rib and just making somebody sore instead of killing him. But no, it was up here where it comes around just under the sternum and just come up under the fifth rib there. And you can cut off the some important glands there. Your gallbladder is right under there. It goes in there and it pierces the lung, and it goes into the lower ventricle of the heart, which immediately causes you to just bleed out just like that. It's very quick death. And of course, depending on how they do it, how much of you just falls out on the ground at the time. I told you this was a nasty business, a nasty chapter. And he gets his revenge. Well, Deuteronomy 32:35 says, to me belongeth vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste. Vengeance belongeth to me. And Paul wrote in Romans 12, 19th verse, he says, Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. Put it aside. For it is written, and this is the important thing, and I think we have to remind ourselves time after time after time, it is written. It is written. It's been established. This is God's word to us, and we need to treat it as God's word. And when we see that it is written, we should listen to what it says. You should recall when Jesus was in the desert and Satan came and tempted him. What was Jesus' reply? It is written. It is written. It's there for everybody to read. Read it. It is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, now we have the twist that Jesus puts on things. This is what Christianity puts forth. This is why the people who say, oh, there's no difference between Islam and Christianity and Buddhism and all that stuff, it's just many paths all leading to the same destination. Well, it's true. It is. All these many paths are leading to the same destination because we are all one day going to stand before the judgment throne of God. We'll be at the Bema seat. Everybody else is going to be at the great white throne. But we're certainly all going to come there. And that's when all these people that have been on the road of Islam and the road of Buddhism and the road of Hinduism and the road of Shintoism and the road of communism and the road of feminism and all this other stuff that goes on, thinking that, this is all just going to get us right there, and it's just going to be peace and goodness. It's not. And Christianity is altogether different than all the rest because it is Jesus Christ himself who said that I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except by me. Very, very exclusive. And then it's the way you deal with things. How do they deal with it in Islam? Off with their head, jihad. If you're not one of us, we're going to kill you. And so we say, what comes on us, and this has to be our attitude, and it's now written here, so pay attention to it. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head, which, by the way, is a good thing, not a bad thing. So we want to do good. We return good for evil. We don't fight fire with fire. We fight fire with water. So that obviously wasn't learned by Joab when he was, reading the Torah, right? Because it was right there in Deuteronomy. Smote him and he died. Verse 28 says, is blame and curses. This is David then who's speaking. And afterward, when David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are guiltless before the Lord forever from the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and on all his father's house. That's where the blame lays. David had nothing to do with this. And it becomes evident that David had nothing to do with this, and the people believed that he had nothing to do with this. It's kind of like some of the things we're learning in today's political scene with the Durham report coming out. And sure enough, the president was not a puppet of Putin. He was not an agent of the Russian government or anything like that. It was all made up. And so David says, this falls on the house and on the head of Joab and on all his father's house. And let there not fail, this is the curse, let there not fail from the house of Joab one that hath an issue, or that is a leper, or that leaneth on a staff, that means crippled, or that falleth on the sword, or that lacketh bread. So that household is going to be cursed from then on. And I would suggest and suspect that that's probably how it turned out over the generations. Because the character of one person will carry down into other generations because of the decisions that are made and the kind of marriages that are made and everything else. And that's often how it gets carried out. It says that the sins of the father are visited to the third and fourth generation. But the mercy of God is to 1,000 generations. And we have to remember that too, because there is always a hope for someone, no matter how bad the situation that they have come out of. In fact, just think of it. You go right back to the dysfunctional family being established by David with all the wives and all that going on. And you find that, you know what, out of all that dysfunctionality, and before that dysfunctionality, remember there were some dysfunctionals in the judges. There were dysfunctions in the patriarchy. There's just terrible sins that took place. And people who you wouldn't think should ever qualify. You know, a prostitute in a doomed city becomes an ancestor of the Lord Jesus Christ, as do these people here. God is able to take a very flawed situation, and he can do just like the truth that Joseph stated. You remember when he was greeting his brothers, he said, you meant it for evil, God meant it for good. Yeah. If you hadn't done what you did, the evil thing that you did to me, I wouldn't be able to save your lives right now. You know, so it can be absolutely mind-blowing, the things that God can do in a life that is hopeless, but is yielded to him. See? It says, so there's going to be this, and it says, so Joab and Abishai, his brother, slew Abner because he had slain their brother Asahel at Gibeon in the battle. And there's a difference too. Asahel was slain in the battle. It was a contest. It was not a personal thing on the part of Abner. But they took it as personal, and they turned this into personal, and therefore they're going to suffer the curse. So then we go into verse 31 through 34, and this is lamentation going on. This is, and David said to Joab, and he gives him the command, and to all the people that were with him, rend your clothes and gird you with sackcloth and mourn before Abner. And King David himself followed the bier, that is the bed that they were carrying him onto his grave. He says, and they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice, and he wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king lamented over Abner and said, died Abner as a fool dieth? Thy hands were not bound, nor thy feet put in fetters. As a man falleth before wicked men, so fellest thou. He did not deserve what he got. And I believe that David is absolutely sincere in the way he is reacting at the funeral and in the orders that he's given. And then we go from that into the mourning and fasting. And so it says, and all the people wept again over him. And when all the people came to cause David to eat meat while it was yet day, yet day, David sware, saying, so do God to me, and more also, if I taste bread or aught else till the sun be down. And all the people took notice of it, and it pleased them, as whatsoever the king did pleased all the people. You know what? There are just some people who have a knack, aren't there? There are some people who just possess a charisma that draws people to them and just makes you like them. And that's the way David has been from the very beginning. From the first time that he showed his courage and his complete confidence in the strength of God Almighty. And he went out and killed the Philistine with a rock. And all the people, just, they made up songs about him. The girls were swooning over him. He was a rock star. It was just amazing what was going on. And he is still this way. Every place he goes, they like him. He deals with them honestly. He deals with them forthrightly. And they respond, and they like him. And they said all the people were pleased. He's a young man at this point, too. He was quite a bit younger than Jonathan. They were great friends. He was like a little brother, I suppose, to Jonathan. Because you got to remember that Ishbosheth, who's the younger brother, so Jonathan was older than 40 years old, and at this point, David is in his early 30s. So he's a young man. In fact, it's kind of interesting. He's coming into it at 30 and reaching his peak, and that's when Jesus revealed himself, at the age of 30. It says, and the king said in his servants, let me see, I've lost my place here. And all the people took notice of it, and it pleased them, as whatsoever the king did pleased all the people. For all the people and all Israel understood that day that it was not of the king to slay Abner, the son of Ner. That was not David's intention. And the king said unto his servants, know ye not that there is a prince and a great man fallen this day in Israel? And I am this day weak, though anointed king. And these men, the sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. The Lord shall reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. And so for Joab and his brother, he's going to let God take care of them. Sometimes David is called upon to exercise God's judgment, just as he did when the Amalekite came thinking he was going to endear himself to David by bringing the crown and all that, and saying, I killed him for you. And he said, you think that was going to make me happy? He's my king. See, what an interesting character. It says, and here he displays a humility. I am this day weak, though anointed king. He's honest. This is draining. This is more than I can put up with. And God's going to have to take care of these guys. So that's his regrets. Now we delve into Act 2 of this, and I'm going to see if we can cover this in about 10 minutes. It says, you see the scene is changing, and now we name the new characters. And we have, first of all, we have Ishbosheth's reaction. And when Saul's son heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, his hands were feeble, and all the Israelites were troubled. Now he's really in deep doo-doo because he doesn't have his general. As much as he doesn't like the general, he needed the general because that's the only reason that he's king, is because Abner was making him king. So now we have a list of the cast of characters here. And Saul's son had two men that were captains of bands. The name was one was Baanah, and the name of the other was Rechab. And the sons of Rimmon, a Beerothite. The children of Benjamin, for Beeroth also was reckoned to Benjamin. So it's in the same area as Benjamin. And the Beerothites fled. Beeroth would be about where the overlook is at the Crooked River Canyon, the Peter Skane Ogden rest stop. That's Beeroth. And they fled, and they went out to Gittaim, which is at the far reaches of Crooked River Ranch. So that's where they've been sojourning until this day. So you go out in the Crooked River Ranch out there, and you will see some Beerothites. You'll probably find some beer cans. I don't know. Anyway, so that's where they are to this day. It says, and Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was lame of his feet. Now, I'm not sure why this was in here, but we're going to see later this young boy, this grandson of Saul, is going to come into the picture again. And again, it's the mix-up of names, because remember, Saul had a son whose name was Mephibosheth, and this is Mephibosheth also. Perhaps Jonathan named him after his brother. Maybe he liked his brother. I don't know. Jonathan was a magnanimous guy. And so they got this one paragraph here, one verse that talks about this man. It says, and Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was lame of his feet. He was 5 years old when the tidings came of Saul and Jonathan. So this was about 7 years ago. And out of of Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel. And his nurse took him up and fled. She was afraid. And it came to pass, as she made haste to flee, that he fell. She dropped him. And I don't know if she dropped him on his head, or if she dropped him somehow and broke a leg or something in some way. But he was lame for the rest of his life. He couldn't walk right, and made it hard for him. He couldn't earn a living by being the way he was. And so he fell and he became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. And so then we go on and we have the dirty deed that gets done. In verse 5 and 6, and the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, Rechab and Baanah, went and came about the heat of the day to the house of Ishbosheth, who lay on his bed at noon. Now I do not know if that is customary or not, or if he was just a lazy, no good for nothing who was depressed because of the situation that he was in, that at any rate, he's taken a nap at noon and not out about his business. It says, and they came thither into the midst of the house as though they would have fetched wheat. They're just kind of, and they smote him under the fifth rib. And Rechab and Baanah, his brother, escaped. But of course, that isn't where it really, now the story goes on and it expands just a little bit more. And so we have a plan that they hatch. It says, for when they came into the house, he lay on his bed in his bedchamber, and they smote him and slew him and beheaded him, and took his head and gat them away through the plain all night. So they ran all night, and they're headed south for Hebron. Verse 8, and they brought the head of Ishbosheth unto David to Hebron, and said to the king, behold, the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, thine enemy, which sought thy life, and the Lord hath avenged my lord, the king, this day of Saul and of his seed. We have done it. You can send us the thanks. We'll take the medals. Yes, you got land for us. Whatever. But then comes the twist. They didn't expect this. You would think they would have. Maybe they didn't get word of what happened to the Amalekite. And David answered Rechab and Baanah his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said unto him, as the Lord liveth, who hath redeemed my soul out of all adversity, when one told me, saying, behold, Saul is dead, thinking to have brought good tidings, I took hold of him and slew him in Ziklag. Who thought that I would have given him a reward for his tidings? How much more when wicked men have slain a righteous person in his own house upon his bed? Shall I not therefore now require his blood of your hand and take you away from the earth? What they did was treacherous. And these are all people who are seeking positions of power or some kind of a government job or whatever it is. And they forget that the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings is in charge of all the things of the earth. And that all he desires is that we, on an individual basis, yield our lives to him. He doesn't take joy in any of this. And these guys have taken matters into their own hand rather than saying, I'm going to see how God is going to do this. Some of the most amazing things can happen when we reach a point where we say, I'm going to see how God is going to do this. And David commanded his young men, and they slew them. They cut off their hands and their feet, and they hanged them up over the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in the sepulchre of Abner in Hebron. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people he has chosen as his own inheritance. Lord, I pray that you would help us to learn the lessons that you so carefully recorded in such gory detail, that we might see what is the importance of your word and of your way. Lord, put within us the heart of David, that we might be courageous on your behalf, but yielded to you. And Lord, help us to be able to understand the writings of Paul when he tells us that we not only leave this vengeance to you and all these big events of life, but Lord, that we lead lives that respond to those who do us ill by doing good things for them. Lord, help us to reach out to all those around us in a world that is dying, that is all bound up in all this kind of garbage. All this stuff that was going on then is going on around us now. And we're beside ourselves. The world is upside down. Right is wrong and wrong is right. And only your word keeps us anchored. And only our hope, knowing that you are the one that controls all of these things ultimately. Lord, help us to be ones that respond as you responded. Help us to truly be Christian. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.